You think you're better than us because you can reach the ceiling. Look at her. The giraffe who thinks she's a human. The words rang out across the schoolyard, echoing in the minds of everyone who heard them. As I watched from a distance, I could see the pain in her eyes, but she didn't cry. She never cried in front of them. But I knew the truth. I knew the tears that came later, when no one was watching. Her name was Amina, and she was the tallest girl in all of Ibadan. Not just tall, towering. At 16, she was already over 6.5 feet, and still growing. Her height made her stand out in a way that no teenage girl ever wants to. In a country where height is often celebrated in men, Amina found herself the target of constant ridicule because she didn't fit the mold of what a girl should be. I was her neighbor, her classmate, and her friend, well, the closest thing to a friend she had. My name is Toby, and I've known Amina since we were children. We used to play together, running through the dusty streets of our neighborhood, before her height started to set her apart. But as we grew older, the distance between us grew too. Not because she changed, but because the world around her did. In Ibadan, a bustling city in southwestern Nigeria, the streets were always alive with activity. From the early morning calls of the muezzin from the mosque to the distant sounds of traders hawking their goods in the markets, life was constantly moving. Our neighborhood was a tight-knit community where everyone knew everyone else's business, whether you wanted them to or not. And for Amina, that meant there was no escaping the scrutiny. Amina came from a modest family. Her father was a mechanic, known throughout the neighborhood for his skill in fixing anything with an engine. Her mother, a strong-willed woman, sold vegetables in the market. They were good people, hardworking and kind, but they didn't know how to handle the unique challenges their daughter faced. They loved her deeply, but they couldn't protect her from the world. From a young age, it was clear that Amina was different. By the time she was 10, she was already taller than most of the boys in her class. At first, it was a novelty, something that drew attention, but not necessarily in a bad way. People would comment on how lucky she was to be so tall, predicting she would become a model or an athlete. But as she continued to grow, the comments turned from admiration to something else, something darker. By the time we reached secondary school, Amina's height had become a source of constant torment. The boys, intimidated by her height, often resorted to mocking her, as if to reclaim some sense of power. The girls, who should have been her allies, instead turned on her, perhaps out of jealousy, or simply because they feared becoming targets themselves. They called her names: giraffe, tower, monster. They laughed when she had to duck to enter a classroom, or when she couldn't find clothes that fit her properly. It wasn't just the students, either. Even some of the teachers, those who should have known better, made snide comments or treated her differently because of her height. They would call on her to reach things for them, as if she were some sort of human ladder, or make jokes at her expense in front of the whole class. Amina tried to laugh it off, but I could see the hurt in her eyes. But Amina never let them see her break. She walked with her head held high, shoulders back, and a quiet dignity that only made them hate her more. At home, though, it was a different story. Amina's mother, Saud, was proud of her daughter's height, seeing it as a sign of strength and future success. She would often tell Amina stories of powerful women in their Yoruba culture, women who stood tall, both literally and figuratively. "You are like Moremi," she would say, referring to the legendary Yoruba queen who was known for her bravery. "You are destined for great things." But Amina didn't feel like a queen. She felt like an outcast. She didn't fit in with the other girls, with their slender frames and delicate features. She didn't fit in with the boys, who were supposed to be taller, stronger, more dominant. She felt like she didn't fit in anywhere. I remember one day, we were walking home from school together. The sun was setting, casting a warm orange glow over the city. We were both quiet, lost in our own thoughts, when Amina suddenly stopped and looked at me. "Toby," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "do you ever feel like you don't belong?" I didn't know what to say. Of course, I had moments where I felt out of place, but nothing like what Amina was going through. I was just a regular girl, blending into the background. I wanted to comfort her, to tell her that everything would be okay, but I didn't have the words. So instead, I just nodded. Amina smiled sadly and continued walking. That was the thing about her, she never burdened others with her pain. She carried it all on her own, never letting anyone see how much it hurt. But I knew. I knew because I was there when she would come home from school and lock herself in her room, refusing to come out for hours. I knew because I saw the way she would hunch her shoulders, trying to make herself smaller, as if she could somehow shrink into the background. I knew because I heard the quiet sobs that escaped her at night, when she thought everyone else was asleep. Her mother, Sod, tried to help in her own way. She would take Amina to the market, introducing her to traders and customers, proudly showing off her tall and beautiful daughter. But Amina hated it. She hated being paraded around like some sort of spectacle. She hated the way people would stare at her, as if she were a freak. But she never told her mother that. She didn't want to hurt her. So she would smile politely and stand there, enduring the stares and whispers, while her mother beamed with pride. One day, everything changed. It was during our school's annual inter-house sports competition. Amina had always avoided sports because, despite her height, she was clumsy. Her long legs seemed to get in the way more than they helped, and she was terrified of embarrassing herself in front of the entire school. But this year, the principal insisted that she join the basketball team. "You're tall," he said, "you'll be a natural." Amina refused at first, but the principal wouldn't take no for an answer. He saw her as the school's ticket to winning the competition, and he wasn't about to let that opportunity slip away. Under pressure, Amina reluctantly agreed. The day of the game was a hot, sweltering afternoon. The sun beat down on the dusty court, and the stands were packed with students, teachers, and parents. The whole school had turned out to watch. I sat in the front row, my heart in my throat, praying that Amina would make it through the game without incident. But from the moment she stepped onto the court, it was clear she was out of her element. The other girls on the team, shorter and more agile, zipped around her as she struggled to keep up. The opposing team quickly realized that Amina was more of a liability than an asset, and they began to target her, exploiting her awkwardness. The crowd laughed every time she fumbled the ball, every time she tripped over her own feet. But then, in the final minutes of the game, something unexpected happened. One of the girls on the other team, in a desperate attempt to score, threw the ball high into the air. It was an impossible shot, one that no one could have blocked. No one, except Amina. Without thinking, she leaped into the air, her long arms stretching up to meet the ball. She swatted it down with a force that sent it bouncing across the court. The crowd went silent, stunned. For a moment, everything seemed to stop. Then, as if in slow motion, Amina grabbed the ball, her movement suddenly fluid, graceful. She dribbled down the court, the other players scrambling to catch up. And then, with a strength and precision that no one had ever seen in her before, she made the shot. The ball sailed through the air, straight into the basket. The buzzer sounded. The game was over. The crowd erupted into cheers. Amina's team had won. But more than that, Amina had won. For the first time in her life, she was the hero, the one everyone was cheering for. She stood there, panting, sweat pouring down her face, and for the first time, I saw her smile, a real, genuine smile. But the story didn't end there. You see, that moment on the basketball court was just the beginning of Amina's transformation. The principal, impressed by her performance, encouraged her to pursue basketball more seriously. At first, Amina was hesitant. She didn't believe that one good game could change anything. But then, something inside her shifted. She realized that her height, the thing that had brought her so much misery, could actually be her greatest strength. She started practicing every day, sometimes late into the night. The same boys who used to mock her now watched in awe as she honed her skills, becoming faster, stronger, more confident. The girls who had once avoided her began to seek her out, wanting to be her friend. And Amina, who had spent so many years hiding from the world, began to step into the light. At first, it wasn't easy. Amina had to work twice as hard as everyone else to overcome the awkwardness she had lived with for so long. Her height, while a great advantage in basketball, also made her the center of attention, and not always in a good way. Coaches and scouts would watch her every move, and any mistake she made seemed magnified by the fact that she stood head and shoulders above her teammates. There were days when Amina wanted to quit. The pressure was immense, and the weight of expectations bore down on her like a ton of bricks. She missed the days when she could just blend into the background, even though she had never really been able to do that. Now, she felt like she was under a microscope, with everyone waiting for her to fail. But Amina was stronger than she knew. With each practice, each game, she grew more confident, more comfortable in her own skin. She started to enjoy the game, to revel in the way her body could move and dominate the court. She learned to use her height to her advantage, to become a force to be reckoned with. Her hard work paid off. By the time we graduated, Amina was a star. She had led our school's basketball team to victory after victory, earning herself a scholarship to one of the top universities in Nigeria. But more than that, she had earned something even more valuable, self-respect. Amina's success didn't go unnoticed. Her story became something of a legend in our neighborhood, a source of pride for everyone who knew her. Parents would tell their children about the tall girl who turned her height from a curse into a blessing, using it to achieve great things. She became a role model, not just for other tall girls, but for anyone who felt different, who felt like they didn't fit in. But Amina's journey wasn't over.